This is one of the last true off-roaders, and probably the cheapest as well. What's Suzuki Jimny really capable of? Watch this to find out. This is the fourth generation of a small Japanese off-roader. Today, the Jimny is a giant, measuring 3.5 meters in length and 164 centimeters in width. In 1970, it was simply called the LJ10, as in Light Jeep 10, and was powered by an air-cooled two-stroke 360cc engine. LJ10 weighed around 600 kilograms and was around 3 meters long, about the size of the original Mini. However, LJ10 had four-wheel drive and was the first mass-produced four-wheel drive K-car. K-car is a Japanese small light vehicle. K-car category was introduced in the late 1940s and it limits the size of the vehicle as well as power output and engine displacement. Owners pay lower taxes and lower insurance premiums, and in some regions they do not have to prove they own a parking space. Most K-cars are sold in Japan only, but some models, usually slightly modified, are also exported. For example, Eurospec 1.5 liter Jimny is not a K-car. In Japan, this car is known as the Jimny Sierra, while the K-car version of the car is known as simply Jimny. Here I decided to cut the historical and market part short. Let's just say for almost 50 years Jimny had a dozen names or so depending on the market, but mainly it was called the LJ, SJ, Samurai and Jimny. And now let's talk off-road. What does it mean that Jimny is one of the last true off-roaders? Firstly, Jimny is built on a ladder frame. This means more rigidity as the car is subject to forces when off-roading. Secondly, Jimny has big approach angle, that's in the front, 37 degrees, breakover angle here 28 degrees and departure angle 49 degrees. That's more than in the Land Rover Discovery, with the optional air suspension, which obviously raises the car and gives it better angles. Yes, the Discovery has greater ground clearance than Jimny's 21 centimeters, but Jimny costs about a quarter of what Land Rover does. And thirdly, Jimny gets proper four-wheel drive with a low range, which helps it make better use of the little torque it has. So it makes better use of it off-road. In order to check how good Jimny is off-road, I visited my friends who happen to have a summer home in the middle of nowhere. Thanks to global warming, there was some mud in mid-February, but once I arrived, everything froze again. Since everything was frozen, we decided to drive down a forest road where nobody dares driving, because usually there's enough mud to bury a car. Well, as long as I stayed on frozen bits, everything was fine, but a few meters down the road, I found myself in a rut. Jimny coped well enough, but we decided it would make sense to turn back. The problem was the ruts ended in about 150 meters. So with some piloting, I tackled the hard terrain. Now, if you're an expert off-roader, I agree with you that I should have had off-road tires, perhaps a winch, some ramps, and I should have checked the terrain on foot. Sure, I agree, but then I wouldn't get any footage and I wouldn't know how capable Jimny is on stock general winter tires. I was almost out of the woods, but with just 50 meters left, I had to go through a rut, and this is where ground clearance ended. Maybe with different tires and a locking diff I would have made it. But without them, I had to get help. Bear in mind, despite almost tipping the car over a few times and being dragged out with a tractor, there is no visible damage to the car. Mentally, I was ready to leave the bumper behind. I drove 250 kilometers back home, and now I'm able to record the rest of this review, in which I'll tell you why you'll probably not buy this car, at least not anytime soon. The problem is availability. As I'm recording this in the first quarter of 2019, the Jimny is probably sold out in most markets. Production plans were based on previous generation sales, which were modest, to to say the least, as, well, let's face it, this is a niche car. It seems Suzuki underestimated how cool the new Jimny looks. Chances are production is going to be increased slightly so as not to disrupt the production of other models in the same factory, and there is going to be some wrestling to get more cars into the markets with higher sales prospects. But this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow. If you want a Jimny, be patient or get a second-hand car. Secondly, as I have proven earlier, Jimny is an off-road car, and like majority of mass-market off-road cars, it's not very good on tarmac. Here I should apologize for my Dacia Duster review. The Duster is a better everyday car than Suzuki Jimny in every respect, as long as the terrain you need to cross is no more challenging than a gravel road. Of course, Jimny looks much better, and I even heard it being called a miniature G-Wagon. But the G-Wagon costs almost 10 times as much as the Jimny to mask the discomfort of driving an off-road car on the road. Let's start with the steering. A simple 90 degrees turn left or right at the crossing requires you to do a 360-degree spin of the steering wheel. And when you're parking, it's even worse because you're going slower. Off-road, this kind of slow steering plays to your advantage because you can make small corrections, tiny corrections like this, without falling into a trap. But on tarmac, it makes simple maneuvers feel like you're driving a lorry. Gear shifter also looks like taken from a lorry, but gears are surprisingly easy to engage, and the throw is quite short. The gearing is also short. From around 60 km per hour you're in fifth, and that's all you've got up to the top speed of 145 km per hour. All you've got to play with is a 102 horsepower naturally aspirated 4-cylinder petrol engine with just 130 Nm of torque and a body with aerodynamic properties of a garden shed. I tried to push her, but that's all she's got. No wonder Suzuki doesn't even disclose the official 0 to 100 km per hour time. My unofficial time is around 14 seconds. With this engine and aerodynamics, you get a lot of noise inside the cabin. Talking becomes hard above 80 km per hour. On the plus side, if you drive 80 km per hour, fuel consumption should be around 7 liters per 100 km, which is about 40 mpg imperial. Drive faster and you'll get 7.5, 8 liters or 35 mpg imperial. Suzuki engines tend to keep fuel consumption at a reasonable level, no matter how hard you drive them though. Fuel tank capacity is 40 liters. Under normal circumstances, the Jimny is rear-wheel drive only, with the front axle manually engaged when you need better traction. The problem is, this is a short, narrow and relatively tall car with very slow steering, so catch some black ice or a rut and you can be very surprised. So my advice is, better drive the Jimny slower than you think it's necessary. Finding good driving position is easy for me, but the seats don't have lumbar support adjustment, and on longer journeys it was just painful for me. Not everyone has back problems, but bear this in mind when considering this car. I like the simple dials, they remind me of early Daihatsu Rocky. However, Rocky also had some off-road indicators on top of the dash. Jimny could use those, at least a tilt meter. I'm surprised Suzuki didn't add a dedicated off-road menu in the infotainment system or on the trip computer. While off-roading, the front passenger will appreciate the grab handle over the glove box. Unfortunately, due to the car's small exterior dimensions, there is also not much space inside for your bits and bobs. The cubby next to the USB is too small for a modern 5-inch smartphone, There's another cubby next to the handbrake. This is also where the seat heater buttons are. By the way, the heater is not very efficient. There are also two cup holders, but they are too far back to reach comfortably. Good thing they are there at all though. You can probably fit a laptop in the door pockets, but nothing much thicker. I liked Suzuki infotainment system a few years ago, but today it just feels out of date. First of all, you have to have warm fingers to actually touch anything for the screen to react. Secondly, the maps are somewhat out of date, at least here in Poland. And then there are the connection problems with your phone. So if I wanted to connect Android Auto on one phone, the connection was broken in the middle and the system doesn't see the phone anymore. And on another example of the same phone, it won't even charge via USB and the system just doesn't see the phone at all. There's a surprising amount of room in the back. Two adults can sit here in relative comfort. Backrests are more comfortable than those in the front. I wish there were additional grab handles though. On rougher roads, the ones overhead are not enough. There are two Isofix mounting points, although I think Jimny will be used for other purposes than transporting children. On my way to the boot, I noticed something I really appreciate, and that's mounting the antenna here on the corner of the roof rather than in the middle. I pointed this out in my Fiat 500L review years ago. Not many people can reach the antenna, which is somewhere there in the middle, without actually getting up on the tire or just getting dirty touching the muddy car. The boot door opens to the right, like in left-hand drive countries. So for the rest of the world, this means walking around it when we park it next to the curb. The boot has, get this, 85 liters capacity without the plastic storage box, which makes the floor flat when you fold the seats. You can also remove the headrest from the front seats and then get flat-ish space for one person to sleep on. I'd suggest getting some sort of a camping mat and maybe something underneath it as well. With the back seats folded, Jimny offers 800 liters up to the roof and around 380 to the window line. That's about the size of Volkswagen Golf boot, if you need some sort of a comparison. In some markets, there's a cargo version without the rear seats, just a divider separating the cargo area from the driver's cabin. I like that there is a 12-volt socket, but I wish there were some anchor points for elastic cords. Now, if you brake harder, everything just flies to the front. If you accelerate, obviously everything goes to the back, because physics. And when you're off-roading, it's even worse. Now, there is a full-size spare here on the boot door, and underneath the storage bin, there is some storage area down here under the floor where the tools reside if you need them. Suzuki Jimny prices start at around 18,000 euro, with the top trim models like this going for about 20 grand. Depending on the market, the higher trim levels may get, for example, LED lights instead of halogen ones. LEDs light the road better, but will be more expensive to replace if you damage them off-road. If you want to take this car off-road, better get the cheapest version and spend some money on better tires, an LED bar and some other off-road gear. The cheapest Jeep Wrangler costs almost 3 times as much as the Jimny. It'll probably go further off-road, but from everyday practicality point of view, it's pretty much the same as the Jimny. If you want a small city crossover, get an Ignis. If you want to take your family on vacation, it's hard to go wrong with a Vitara. I'll never forget my off-road adventure in the Jimny, but it's not a car I'll need on everyday basis. And what do you think about the new Suzuki Jimny? Are you looking for a cheap off-roader or a lifestyle crossover? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe if you haven't, like and share this video with your friends who are looking for a new car. Also click that bell icon so you don't miss any of my new videos. And join me for more reviews every Friday. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Na pasażera. Dobra, 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 dobra. Jeszcze trochę, prostuj. Jedziesz, jedziesz, jedziesz. Jeszcze trochę. Jeszcze troszeczkę. I teraz spróbujesz wjeżdżać. Cofnij, cofnij. Jeszcze na prostych kołach cofnij. Ale nie wiem jakie mam koło. Aha, dobra. Ale tylko troszeczkę. On jest z redukcją już teraz spięte? Tak. No to będziemy ściągać się ciągnikiem. Spadniesz! Dawaj teraz! Dobra i prostuj, prostuj, prosto, 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 prosto. Prosto, tu. No, cały czas zaraz spadniesz. Na razie to żadnym w wodzie, bo się zatrzymasz na tych skorupach lodowych. Tu. Prosto. Prosto, 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 prosto. Tu.
Znaczy boję się tego, bo tu jest głęboko.
Tu jest głęboko i to jest tutaj, bo się chyba wbije drzwi. Uważaj na to, bo tego to nie wyjdzie.
Ja mogę wjechać,
Może
ale
wyjdzie.
to jestem w stanie ominąć. Nie, nie.
Też się rusza. Ale dwójkę może byśmy to...
Pokaż, może jak stanę na tym, to... Ja jestem trochę cięższy mimo wszystko. Uwaga.
Zajebiście. Czekaj. Tą, ale nie za dużo. Tak jest, jedź. Dobra. Prosto. I teraz uważaj. Stopę. Bo teraz ta strona jest lepsza. Widzisz, jakby się tu przedostał, to wtedy to niestety w tym miejscu musisz wyjechać. Poza tymi, to możemy pousuwać zresztą.
Tu mam szansę.
Tu masz szansę.
Poczekaj.
Tak, właśnie jak stoisz.
I tędy.
I tutaj wtedy okrakiem na to wjeżdżasz, to zaraz pozwalamy i wyjeżdżasz. Już tam